So what we got here is a statement by a very powerful man, and it's getting a fair amount of traction right now. And it's getting the right kind of attention, actually. It's from all the people that you'd expect to be bitching and moaning, and you can probably hear them from where you're at, but we're going to read this entire statement in its, entirety, for a lack of a better term. Senator Josh Hawley's statement on objecting during Electoral College certification process on January 6th. Looks like there's going to be a showdown after all. Following both the 2004 and 2016 elections, this is specifically when a House member objected to the certification of certain states and a senator joined in at the same time, which is what's going to be happening on January 6th. For decades at this point, Democrats have always objected to an incoming or an incumbent Republican win. At least a House member has, and sometimes, like what Senator Hawley pointed out here in 2004 and 2016, but it has happened forever. So that's why they've been so vocal. All the Democrats and all the media class have been so vocal and saying, this is just a dog and pony show. This is just unconstitutional. As you can see here, Kyle Griffin, who is with MSNBC, I know everybody should be shocked by his statement. There was no fraud. Just because millions of voters believe the lies of the president about fraud does not mean that these voters deserve to be heard. Their argument makes no sense. That's good. I'm glad that he's seen all of the information that's out there. He fucking works for MSNBC. What do you expect? He's pushing his own fucking narrative. And of course, if you can see it there as well, Robert Barnes, the great Robert Barnes, tears him to shreds. And he has no retort for that because he's just a fucking... Look at him. He's got that little pederast mustache and he works for MSNBC. There's no bigger slam I could put on him than that. Well, let's get back to Josh Hawley, an actual man making an actual statement of actual facts. Democrats in Congress objected to the certification of electoral votes in order to raise concerns about election integrity. They were praised by Democratic leadership and the media when they did, and they were entitled to do so. But now, those of us concerned about the integrity of this election are entitled to do the same. Turnabout is fair play, folks. I cannot vote to certify the Electoral College results on January 6th without raising the fact that in some states, particularly Pennsylvania, and we'll follow up on that here in a second, failed to follow their own state election laws. God damn it, Act 77 strikes once more. And I cannot vote to certify without pointing out the unprecedented effort of mega corporations, including Facebook and Twitter. And it's very funny, and that's why I've been pointing out Josh Hawley in this, because he was heading those senatorial hearings, him and along with Ted Cruz, who prior to recording this, I checked any and all of his public statements, and he hasn't made anything yet about joining Josh Hawley and objecting to the certification, but I totally expect now that one senator has broken ranks, you're going to see Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, maybe Mike Lee, Marsha Blackburn, the regular cabal of people who are actually looking towards the future and not trying to drudge up the past in objecting to these as well, because there are a whole host of GOP House members, incoming and both incumbent as well, that are going to be objecting to this. So, expect a cavalcade here in the next couple of days leading up to the 6th. Or maybe some surprise people on the 6th as well. Who knows? We at least know that Pennsylvania is going to be looked after. I hope Hawley also objects to, we'll run them down because it's been a minute. Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia, along with Pennsylvania, of course, to interfere in this election in support of Joe Biden. And very least, Congress should investigate all allegations of voter fraud and adopt measures to secure the integrity of our elections. No more mail-in ballots. Even if this is an unsuccessful bid by Trump and the GOP, his wing of the GOP, because, Mitch McConnell is going to be there and he'll potentially look very disheveled at the fact that somebody's going to be breaking ranks in the GOP Senate. We should probably see that there is enough of a ruckus about mail-in ballots. I know they're corrupt. You guys probably know that they're corrupt. It shouldn't be allowed to stand. And if nobody makes a ruckus, it's just going to be the norm going forward. And we can't let that happen. And that's something that Hawley points out in the final line here. But Congress has so far failed to act. That makes more grammatical sense. For these reasons, I will follow the same practice Democratic members of Congress have in years past and object during the certification process on January 6th to raise these critical issues. It looks like somebody's actually going to get to see the evidence at this point. Wow, I can't believe this is actually going to happen. I was very hopeful it was going to happen. That was kind of facetious, but I am super excited to see this. And then just seeing the right people getting pissed off just knows something is going to happen on the 6th. There's going to be that huge rally Trump's going to be manning that rally by everything that he's been talking about. It looks like he's going to be there front and center. This is easily going to be the biggest right-wing turnout for any post-election rally. Like, there was the couple that were in Washington that were whatever. What was it? It looked like the first one was about a couple 10,000 people, and then the second one was somewhere around that. It was about 10,000-ish so people. Still not discrediting those people that made that drive or made the trip to Washington, D.C., but that is going to look like child's play compared to January 6th, because that's pretty much the drop-dead date. Everybody knows, who's been following any sort of legitimate coverage of this, knows that January 6th is pretty much the end. You can make a claim that everything doesn't stop until January 20th, but once the vote gets certified or it gets properly counted, that's about it. Then you'd be in well unprecedented territory. Not saying it can't happen, but January 6th is the end date. Like I was saying, Twitter intelligentsia are flipping their fucking lids, but somebody who had access to a very powerful account made a very, very stupid decision, because not long after Josh Hawley made a statement, Walmart replied. Walmart, if you can fucking believe this. Here's what they said. Go ahead, get your 2-hour debate. Hashtag sore loser. Now, okay, after this, they did clear it up by saying the tweet was published earlier, was mistaken posted by a member of our social media team. We deleted the post and have no intention of commenting on the subject to certify the Electoral College. We apologize to Senator Hawley for this error and any confusion of our position. It's just more proof that these idiots are infiltrating everywhere, because I think if one mega corporation was going to support the GOP, they kind of know where the bread is buttered. So Walmart would probably stick up for the Missouris, Mississippis, Louisianas, Alabamas of the world. But okay, now that we have this all straight, Hawley's going to object. Gates, Mo Brooks, the incoming House member from Georgia, Marjorie something Green, I forget her name. She's one of those Q aficionados. They're going to be objecting, and that is more than enough people now. It would be nice if more senators would join in because, well, to be completely honest, there is no downside to this, okay? Let me explain. The people that this would piss off will be pissed off by your decision to act or breathe or sleep or do anything really because you're a member of the GOP. They're just going to be pissed off regardless. And if you don't do anything, you're going to be pissing off a massive amount of the Trump base, which is, by all accounts, anybody who would fucking vote for the GOP. So you'd be pandering to, let's just say, a third of the base that's out there. Like Hawley said, 75 million Americans voted for Trump. They deserve to have their fucking votes validated. If we're going to go ahead and reaffirm everybody's life, why don't we start by reaffirming everybody's vote? I know I'm preaching to the converted, but that would make a pretty nice bumper sticker, by the way. Okay, and like in Hawley's statement, he said in 2004 and 2016, the Democrats officially contested the certification of the Electoral College. Now that we have a Senate member and a whole bunch of House members, what's the formal process going forward? What can we expect on January 6th? We got a real official-ass website here, so we'll just run down the highlights. It's a very, very, very long article, and I'll link it as well if I miss anything in my little rundown here. But I'm going to hit on all the important points. I've explained it loosely in a bunch of different videos, but now that this is going to happen, at least in Pennsylvania, like I said, hopefully Hawley takes those other 6 states seriously and does something with them. I'm only including New Mexico now because there's a lawsuit there, which I don't know when it's going to be docketed or what the fuck is actually happening with it. All of these lawsuits just seem to just go into the ether right now, but to be fair, it's between Christmas and New Year's, so. And there's, a Monday before January 6th, so I think they're just going to be lost to time. Anywho, explaining how Congress settles Electoral College disputes. The next public step in the 2020 presidential election will happen on January 6, 2021, when Congress meets to validate the election. If there are objections at that meeting, a formally obscure law will be consulted to settle disputes about electors. The 358 electors representing presidential candidates declared winners in the state's contest met on Monday to cast their electoral votes as required under the Constitution's 12th Amendment of the federal statute. Former Vice President Joe Biden received 306 votes and President Donald Trump received 232, with 270 votes needed to declare a winner. This was written, December 15th, just a day after the electors got sent there to Congress in order to issue their votes, but they also have yet to mention that there were dueling electors sent from the 7 states that I mentioned before. Federal law requires a state to deliver certified electoral college results to the vice president serving as the president of the Senate. Mike Pence is going to be the one counting those votes. There's a lawsuit going on right now for somebody trying to sue Mike Pence to only accept the GOP electors. This sounds like another one of those trust the process type things, and I don't know if it really deserves its own video, because I think that this is just another one of those conspiracy that kind of takes away from the substantive issues. It just seems very silly, and it's probably also not going to go anywhere, because trying to force somebody to do something never really, tends to sit well with people. I look forward to bringing this up again when we get told that we need to be vaccinated. Ugh. Then, a joint meeting of Congress is required by the 12th Amendment to count the electoral votes and declare the winners of the presidential election. The session on January 6th, 2021 starts at 1 p.m. local time. It'll be 11 o'clock where I'm sitting, 10 o'clock in the, what would that be, Pacific, California, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, that whole fucking liberal shit dick hellhole. Sorry, guys. And then what would that be, noon central? I think that's the one in the middle. So yeah, get your popcorn ready for that one. Objections at the meeting about electors will be settled using a process established by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. The law has its origins in the contested presidential... Contested's a funny way of saying stolen. Presidential election of 1876 between Samuel Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes. That's not a tough word to say. I guess I was just getting excited. Several states during the 1876 election sent rival electoral ballots to be considered by Congress, which lacked a procedure to decide among contested slates of electors. The short-term solution of the special 15-person commission, including 5 House representatives, 5 senators, and 5 Supreme Court justices, to decide the election, which went to Hayes after many concessions. And that is a video, and there's a significant amount of literature out there on that election as well, and we can go back to that election in the future because it's very instrumental in laying the groundwork for this such election as well. And then also in a few decades previous to that, when Andrew Jackson had his presidential victory stolen from him, he ended up forming the Democratic Party and is still the only decent Democratic president. Anyways, more loose ends to be tied up at a later date. In the end, the participating Supreme Court justices cast the deciding vote. I don't like that outcome, but yeah, that could be what happens. Theoretically, there are 6 conservative Supreme Court justices, but realistically only 2 that you could count on. After the House and Senate members voted on party lines, the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and several federal statutes address questions about contested electors that land in Congress. The Congressional Research Service's current interpretation of the Electoral Count Act explains its understanding of the process and when it comes to objections to electoral votes. Objections to individual state returns must be made in writing by at least one member of each of the Senate and House of Representatives, and they can do this multiple times. If an objection meets these requirements, the joint session recesses and the 2 houses separate and debate the question of their respective chambers for a maximum of 2 hours. The CRS, Congressional Research Service, says the 2 houses then vote separately to accept or reject the objection. They then reassemble the joint session and announce the results of those respective votes. An objection to a state's electoral vote must be approved by both houses in order for any contested votes to be excluded. That interpretation applies to the 2 scenarios in 2020 election. The first is a situation where only 1 set of electoral votes is submitted by a state, and objections are raised on grounds that electoral votes were not irregularly given by an elector, or that the electors were not lawfully certified according to state laws, according to the CRS. And that seems to be the most likely scenario right now. Second scenario applies when 2 or more slates of electors from the same state are submitted to Congress. This still kind of fits. As was the case for the 1876 presidential election, it is unclear, said the CRS, if Congress could vote to discard a slate of electoral votes certified by the state if it followed its own election laws. Aha! The assumption presented in the law is only one list would be from electors who were determined to be appointed pursuant to the state election contest statute, as provided from Section 3 of the United States Constitution, subsection 5, and that in such case, only those electors should be counted, the CRS determined. Regardless of the December 15th, 2020, the first scenario would seem more likely unless the state legislature decides to send a second slate of electors to Congress and the archivist by January 6th, 2021. By December 9th, 2020, all 50 states and the District of Columbia had certified the electoral votes as required by federal law. Yes, that was the quote-unquote safe harbor date when YouTube put in their fucking stupid new restrictions. Still, questions remain about Electoral Count Act as a viable long-term solution to the problem that it purports to resolve. Some dolt at the Washington Post opines, "I've spent much of my academic career," whenever you have somebody qualifying their qualifications in his situation here, you gotta take this as a grain of salt because you know he's just somewhere sitting back with a snifter of brandy with his tweed jacket with the leather patches on the elbows going, throughout my academic career trying to pause its meanings, and I still find it impenetrable or at the very least indeterminate. Well, we're gonna see it fucking play out now there, pal. He admitted various problems Foley pointed to include that unclear role of states' governors and other state officials as certifiers, and what the role of the vice president can play in the process. Under the federal statute, the vice president role is to preserve order at the joint meeting. What does that mean? The authority may be interpreted as encompassing the authority to decide questions of order, but the statute is not explicit on this point. In past meetings, the Vice President has ruled on questions about how the session should be conducted in compliance with federal statutes which limit motions and almost all debate at the joint sessions. The Vice President is also allowed to call for objections when electoral votes are announced and to state the results of these objections after the House and State meet separately to consider them. Stephen Siegel, some lawyer, found the act a coherent enactment, qualifying that its coherence does not mean it is a complete response to the problems of Congress's electoral vote counting. One problem, he said, is determining the majority of electoral votes needed to pick a winner if some of the votes are discarded by Congress from the election. Yeah. Currently, the 270 votes are needed to win the presidential election. This presents an open issue if the 270 threshold would be lowered if fewer electoral votes are counted. Some revisionists, and to be completely fair, this is a very, very obtuse and not very well defined act, law, however you want to purport it. And it was drafted in a hurry as a concession to Rutherford B. Hayes because, 1876 is a little fucking sketchy. Vesan Kasavan is a name that I never thought I'd read. Oh, he said that this is unconstitutional for several reasons. This will be very fun to contradict or to mix in with Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, the entire litany of different unconstitutional states that just cast electors and hastily certified them, including that the act's ability to bind a future Congress to procedural rules passed in 1887. Cool. I'd link to that article, but I feel like this guy doesn't make any persuasive arguments. Feel free to read it because it'll be that hyperlink in the link that I provide for this article as well. If there is an objection to an elector or electors on January 6, 2021, there's recent precedent. This is what I was referring to in Josh Hawley's statement. In January 2005, Representative Stephanie Tubbs Jones and Senator Barbara Boxer objected to Ohio's electoral votes for George W. Bush, alleging there were not in all known circumstances regularly given. You know what else that was about, actually? Diebold voting machines. Very funny, very thought-provoking. The House and Senate met separately as required, and using a roll call vote, the objections were widely rejected. The House denied the objection in a 31-267 vote, and the Senate denied it in a 1-74 vote. Ouch. So like I said, this is another Hail Mary, okay? This is something that now looks like it's going to happen unless Josh Hawley gets cold feet. But all it would require is a simple majority in the Senate and in the House to decertify one set of electors and place a certification on the other set of electors, or just merely take them off the table, whatever makes more constitutional sense as decreed by Mike Pence, because he's going to be running this shit show. Now, if every single state, if all 7 states end up getting contested, that will be 14 hours of deliberations that could potentially happen. That's a lot. This could stretch out for a couple of days here. It's going to be a Hail Mary, but yeah, more information we get about this, because this is going to be, well, relatively unprecedented. And like we've seen here, it happened already in January of 2005 for one state. We're going to have potentially 7 states up here, so we'll stay tuned. We'll see who else joins in the fight up there in the Senate, and see what the rest of the fallout is, because this just happened this morning. So other than the blue check marks losing their mind, you haven't really heard a whole bunch out of anybody else who really means anything. Not saying that they mean anything, but that is all we got on this one. Now you guys know what the Electoral Count Act of 1887 is going to do. It's pretty vague in what it purports to do, but we know that there's going to be a whole bunch of debates happening on the 6th with a whole bunch of enthusiastic people down there rallying to make sure that their voices are properly heard based on, well, election that happened, oh my gosh, by that time, 10 weeks prior. Unbelievable. But that's all for this. Now we got to hit on some other stuff here. So thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.